just moving straight from the top, we have our motor, okay? We have a piston inside this that drives everything. You know the difference between 2-stroke and 4-stroke motors?
2-stroke is premix, sir?
It can be, but there's also 2-stroke diesel engines. So it doesn't use premix. It's just the amount of strokes it takes to complete a full revolution, okay? So we'll just go off of, I'm just gonna talk about 4 strokes real quick, okay? So you have a piston that sits inside this head, okay? Surrounded in this little cavity, okay? As it goes down, injectors will push fuel in, it'll push gasoline at the top, right? As it comes up, the spark plug right here, which we'll talk about in a second, ignites that fuel, which creates that power stroke, which pushes it down, okay? And as it comes up, comes back up, the exhaust valve opens up and releases that exhaust. And as it goes down, it starts the whole process again. So that's 4 strokes. 2-stroke, it does it in half the time. So as the intake stroke comes in and it's letting fuel in, it's also, as it gets to a point, it exhausts the old gas, that seals up, does the thing, fires, comes down, exhaust, does the whole thing in 2 strokes, okay? So it's a faster movement of the motor, but it requires different fuel most of the time, okay? So that's just what a 4-stroke and 2-stroke down and dirty is. Any questions on that?
No, sir.
Pretty straightforward, okay? Right here you have your decompression switch. All right, every motor has compression inside of it, whether it's on or off. This just alleviates some of the challenges you may have when you try to pull start it. Now this is a small motor, so it shouldn't be a challenge at all, but like when I used to ride dirt bikes, I had a big Honda 500 that I needed to pull a decompression lever to release that compression so I could kickstart it, okay? That's all this thing does. You can utilize it, you don't have to utilize it, it's totally up to you, okay? But just know that's what it does. It just makes the pull start a little bit easier, all right? So now we go to our spark plug, which looks just like this, okay? It sits in here and screwed in. This part of the scrunch fits perfectly for that. That's what it's made for, to pull that spark plug out, okay? Sits in here. We have your spark plug wire attached to the top. Okay, you have a magneto right here. You have a ground and a hot that send an electrical current to it, which is here, it says this, and then sends that shock or that electrical current through the spark plug post and a little flange here. That's what creates your spark, which ignites the gas, which pushes your power stroke down, which drives your motor, all that, okay? So if it's not working right, or if it doesn't run right, there might be a spark plug issue. Pull it out, make sure it's not all gummed up, right? We use 50 to 1 for this motor. If we put 30 to 1 in, 40 to 1, or we put diesel engine or regular, whatever it is, you could gum up this. All you gotta do is take a wire brush and lightly scrub it to clean off all the gunk. Now, if you hit it too hard, you might close the gap on this. So this part between the two things is called a gap. Now, there's a certain amount of distance that needs to be for each motor, not just the chainsaw, but every motor has a different gap setting. I don't know what the gap setting is for the chainsaw anymore. I used to on probation, I don't. All I know is, though, is that if you're in the wildland setting and you need a gap of spark plug, your IRPG front cover, the thickness of it is set perfectly to gap your spark plug, okay? Just a little trick of the trade.
Sir, what's that called again?
The magneto.
Okay.
All right. So, any questions on the spark plug?
No, sir.
Pretty straightforward. All right. Again, your spark plug wire connects. I just didn't want to pull it off. It can be a pain in the butt sometimes. All right. So as you can see, moving back, we have your air filter assembly. Quarter turn pulls your air filter off. Go ahead, pull it off. So this is a paper air filter. Paper part is the actual filter itself. This prevents all that stuff that we're cutting through, sawdust, debris, whatever, from getting into the motor. At least it's supposed to prevent that. Now, in order to clean this, since it's paper, do you think we could use wash or soap and water with it?
No, sir.
No, we can't. Do you think it'd be good to put a blow tip to it? Yeah. Probably not, right? So, I mean, maybe hit it from a distance, but I would do a light, blow on it, maybe dust it off the best I could, use a rag or whatever. Try not to push through it because it defeats the purpose of the air filter. Now, they don't all come like this. Some of them have a paper filter with a secondary foam filter that fits around it. Now, that foam filter we could take off, we could wash with soap and water, we could let it dry, lasts a lot longer. Some of these, the filter itself is like this plastic rubbery thing, and then it has a foam element around it. all of that could be washed with soap and water. So it's just dependent on what saw you have and what their air filter looks like. Okay, but just be able to recognize that this is a paper one. If it doesn't look like this, it's probably foam, and you're probably safe to do a little bit more to it. Cool?
Yes, sir.
In front of it is your carburetor, which we can't see because of the air filter assembly, but the carburetor sits right here, okay? And that's where all the magic happens with the fuel. Right here you have a choke. What the choke does is it moves a needle valve in there, which closes off the air ratio. So in order for a motor to run properly, it needs the proper, not only fuel, but it needs the fuel air mixture or ratio to be exact so it'll run smoothly, okay? When we don't use these things for a day, a week, a month, a year, whatever, and we go to start it, I don't care how hot it is outside, we call it a cold start, okay? So what we want to do is we want to put it on full choke. What that does is it'll close a valve like this, and it won't let any air in, or lets very limited air in, so the motor's getting as much gasoline as it can to fire up. Once it fires up and you squeeze the throttle, this thing will kick up to the half choke, or you manually have to do it if it doesn't fire. Kick it over the half choke, keep it running, and once it gets warmed up, then you can kick it off and you're good to go, okay? Usually with the steel chainsaws, put on full choke, you pull it until you hear the run. It'll kick over and die. You flip it to half choke, pull it maybe once or twice, it should fire up right away.
Sure.
Cool? Any questions on the choke or carburetor?
Carburetor.
So moving forward, moving back, so your handle. So you have your throttle guard or your trigger guard, whatever you want to call it, and your throttle. Okay, so you obviously can't depress the throttle without pushing the guard on. Right, the more you press it, the more fuel gets in the motor, the faster the piston moves, which spins the crankshaft faster, which spins the chain faster, and all that. You see how that works?
Sure.
So, like I said before, when we utilize these small two-stroke motors, we want them working at high RPMs. That's when they're the most efficient. So we full throttle in, full throttle out, and we let it idle down by itself. All right. So squeeze it all the way, let it off. Pretty straightforward there. Any questions? Nope.
Sir.
Okay. So we go to this side. Now we have our gasoline tank and our bar oil tank. So if you do it like that, you pull the gasoline out. So pretty straightforward, dude. You guys flip up the black part. It's a quarter turn to the left, and it opens up. Same thing with your bar oil. Cool. What type of fuel does this take?
Pre-mixed.
Okay, what does that mean?
It requires a special mix of fuel, not just gasoline, to start the engine, sir.
What's it mixed? What's the gasoline mixed with?
It's mixed with chainsaw lubricant, sir.
Huh?
Mixed with the lubricant, sir.
Or known as
Oil.
oil. Okay. Premix is gasoline and oil. When it says 50 to 1, that's the ratio. So it's 50 parts gas to 1 part oil. Okay. Now, I'm not going to tell you exactly how many ounces is each because it depends on the container that it's going in. All right. This 1 gallon container takes a different ratio than it does a 5 gallon. They both end up being 50 to 1, but it's just different. So just know it's 50 parts gas to 1 part oil. Cool?
Sir.
Cool. All right. Go with bar oil. What do you think the bar oil does?
Lubricates the chains, sir.
Lubricates the chain. Very good. What do you think we want to run out first?
Gas.
The gas, right? Because what happens if bar oil runs out first?
Could actually seize the motor. Just tear up your bar, tear up your chain.
Yeah, it wouldn't necessarily seize the motor unless the chain completely seized and we were trying to run it and it wasn't moving. But yeah, it would burn up our chain, burn up our bar, and cause some damage to that. So we always want the fuel to run out first before the bar oil. What happens if fuel runs out? Chainsaw stops, right? That's it.
Sure.
Doesn't hurt it at all. It just runs out of gas. Put more in it, fire back up, ready to go. Okay. The way you adjust that, which we're not going to do any adjusting, but is this little. You see this little indicator right here? It has a little oil symbol with a little link on it, chain link.
Sir.
And it says, if you go to the left, it's less. If you go to the right, it's more. Well, there's a little screw in here, which you guys all have it on yours. You can take a look at. You just adjust it to however you want it to make it match what your needs are. Okay.
This is to adjust what again, sir?
This is to adjust how much oil is going onto your bar.
Okay.
Okay. All right, moving forward, we have your pull cord. Okay. Yours is still on, don't take it off, but this is what it looks like. Okay. This is what the inside looks like. Pretty simple mechanism. Spring loaded, pull it, and it retracts it. Okay. It spins the flywheel, which turns everything, which starts the firing process, which starts the motor process. Okay. So when that does, it fires up the magneto, which sends the electrical current, which fires the piston, which turns the crank, which eventually the motor will start turning. All right. But if this breaks, all you got to do, if it doesn't come uncoiled, is all this is, guys, is just a knot at the top of your handle. You cut where you need it, tie a little knot at the top, and away you go. Okay. And what it does is it restricts your throw, but you'll still be able to manage. Okay, unless you need a whole new assembly. All right, this is your flywheel right here. This does is it grabs air and it cools the motor, brings the motor in, and also starts your motor, but as it's running, it cools your motor. Okay, and then that's why it's very important to keep this screen or grill clean so it doesn't restrict the air movement inside that. Cool?
Yes, sir.
All right. Any questions? Pretty much hit the whole chainsaw. Oh, sorry, and this is your exhaust, so your muffler. So try not to touch that. That'll be very hot once we start running them, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right, no questions?
No, sir.
All right, let's put it back together.